Yep. Welcome everyone to our laundry room this afternoon. Our hosts today are David Oliva and Dave Smith. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Oh, hi everyone. So welcome to the laundry room for this evening or afternoon. We're going to be discussing first call completes for today. How do you define it? How do you track it? What's the best way to manage first call completes and make sure that your first call complete rate is up? What's a good first call complete rate? So a lot of good conversation around first call completes as a very, very important metric. And before we get to talking about it, Dave, is there anything you want to add as an introduction?
Yeah, I think that we all have the same struggles, and no matter how good of a first call complete we think we have, we always want better, right? And I think so. The biggest confusion I get, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about this, and I like a lot of involvement from the group on this, because is how do you actually measure? Because everybody's got different measures it differently. For example, I don't include my walks in my first call complete. I separate those out. So when people start comparing numbers, they got their 60 or 70 or 80 or whatever. It could be, comparing apples to oranges to bananas, so that's my thought to get started on that. So I'll turn to you over, David, to start that conversation.
Yeah, no, I like that. In fact, I had that was going to be my starting point, is how do we define a first call complete? Because if we can't agree on the definition of the term, then we can't really have a discussion about it.
Right.
So who has a definition for first call complete that they would like to offer up to start the discussion? Do you include your walk rate in first call complete? Do you include your trip charges only, or is that not included? I personally don't include trip charges as part of our first call complete rate, because I don't really think it counts, because it's not even a sale. So I know somebody must have something to add on this. So I'm going to say, Manny, do you include walks in your first call complete rate?
We do, but we also measure walks, so we can take those out very easily that way.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Doug, I know this is something that
we use service desk, so really all that's kind of done manually, because you can't do a walk report out of service desk.
So how do you figure it out? Oh, you said you can or you can't?
That extra time, but we think it's worth it.
Okay. So yeah, when we measure our first call complete rate, we're just looking at all of the jobs we did, how many collected, complete repair, complete job on the first trip, and that's what we're doing it. So we're aiming. I mean, I think ours is a little bit low, probably around 65 to 70%. I think it's become a little bit more difficult to keep that up high over the years as more and more electronics are added that are all different part numbers and are hard to stock. I'm going to look and call on John Schooler, because he's in the top left of my screen. John, how do you measure first call complete?
Right now, part of why I'm here is because we don't do a great job of it. So I've got, we use service desk as well. And so I'm really only looking at the, what that spits out, which includes walks and everything else.
You can export. Oh, you're muted, David. So you could export your calls, right? And if you did it by the month or something, you'd be there forever. Although some Excel expert would be able to quickly make shortcuts, but you certainly can separate your customers who just collected a service fee from a first-time complete. But it is a shortcoming, I think, of Service Desk, because I've ignored first call completes as a COD company forever, just because it's not practical without a parts distributor in the state. So But it's an important thing, man. It moves the needle, doesn't it? If you can get your first call complete rate up 10% with pre-ordered parts and things like that, that's huge money for you.
Yeah, agreed. And I have gone through, done the export, done the Excel jockey stuff, and figured out before, but haven't really had a good target or a good idea. We service all brands, so don't really have a good target for what we ought to be trying to chase, and didn't want to waste a whole bunch of money on truck stock or whatever it is trying to get to some target I just made up. So I'd be curious to hear kind of from some other people what you've been able to achieve in that situation.
Mm.
I mean,
what we
I would
just
say
did-
we.
But
No, go ahead.
okay, so what
I-
we do is the same thing. We use an EPAS, and it doesn't really do a really good job of separating that as well. So we have to export it in Excel. And so what we do is, any COD call, it has to be COD, right? Because your warranty and your contracts, they're contracts. So you're going to get paid for those. But so any COD call that is one trip and only a service call is collected, if you can just filter out it that way in your Excel, that can come up with your walk rate pretty easy. And I think most of our programs can do that.
Isn't it funny that the walk rate, which is a pretty critical part of our business, is not being tracked in these programs? Something we got to get the word out to them. That's important.
Doug, I'll just add that our new software that we've been working with does track that. There is a way to keep track of that, as well as first call complete. But
Well, there you go. All right. I'm
separate
switching
software.
over
We can talk about that
15
later on.
years later. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, a service call only, in our company anyway, doesn't necessarily mean it was a walk. You could have walked in and, fixed it by unlocking the child lock or something. So that's a repair in my book. It's something that happens.
Yeah, Manny, that brings up, I said that I had done the exercise once, and that jogged my memory of why I haven't continued to do it every time, because it's a really manual process if you want to get really accurate about what was a true walk versus what was, a repair technically. And that was kind of stymied my efforts there.
I feel
One of the
like
interesting
I
things
said
on the-
this. I feel like I've said this before, maybe in the last laundry room. The way I look at it is if a customer calls us out for an appliance and we don't do any work, it doesn't matter the reason. I don't think. I mean, I feel like who's going to be excited about paying $130 service fee to find out that your control panel was in lock mode? They might be grateful, and if they're really nice people, they're going to be like, could have been worse. But half of them at least are going to go, damn it, man. And then half of those people are going to say, shouldn't they have told me that on the phone? So to me, when you're in the home, if there's an opportunity to do something else to add value for the stop, which could mean more money, so to me, any service call only is a walk at our company.
Can I input
I was
something?
gonna. Yeah, go. Herb.
Yeah, one of the things that we do, we're very focused on, is having our office staff diagnose the problems and get the parts in before we go. And we do not limit what our for inventory. And frankly, until recently, inventory's free. You weren't making anything on your money anyway. Might as well put it in your truck and have somebody complete a call in one trip. But our office staff is critical, absolutely critical to us showing up with the right parts.
So are you then, I might have missed something because you broke up a little bit. Are you then returning the unused parts? Because that's how we handle pre-orders. We do as much pre-diagnosis as possible and then return what we don't need.
Well,
or you're saying you just put everything.
Yeah, we carry probably $35,000 or so in parts in our shop because we sell a lot of parts to do-it-yourselfers. And so in the morning, these guys can, they can get all the parts they think they need.
Hey Herb, who's doing, is it your CSRs doing the pre-diagnosing, or do you have a tech looking over all the jobs?
No, we have two girls in the office, and they've become very adept at diagnosing these problems. And our office man, one of them's been there for probably 20 years. The other one's been there for 3 or 4, and it's shocking to me their depth of knowledge. And a
So
lot a lot of that, but when they write up when they take the information from the customer on the problem, it's all in the write-up that the tech gets the day before he goes out to the call anyway. And so he has the opportunity to input what parts he may need also.
Yeah.
you're encouraging your techs to see the schedule in advance then, and
Oh
know,
yeah.
what they
Well, it's
might want to
all
pre-order.
automated. They can see what what they're doing 2-3 days from now if they choose to. And they all at least a day before go through all of their calls to determine what it is that they need. So
I currently have a tech on workers' comp. So I have him in the office pre-diagnosing, and that happened mid-March. And my FCCs have increased a lot since mid-March because of that.
exactly.
So, going forward, after he gets off workers' comp, I consider this might be a position I need to fill.
May I interject? I didn't see anywhere to raise your hand.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's Ken Epling. I'm with AIG, or some of you may know me from many other places. But what's interesting, the reason I jumped on is we're actually working internally on ways to assist and improve first time completes for our servicers out there in our network. And I unfortunately had a bit of a computer glitch. I was a few minutes late getting on, and I think when you guys are talking about a walk, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. A walk. What do you mean it's a walk?
So
It's service call only, so
Yeah,
the
service call
customer
only.
doesn't proceed with any repair.
correct.
So it's a
That only
billable
applies for CODs. It's happening. It's just for CODs. It's when they do not accept the service per se.
I'm sorry?
Yeah,
It's for COD work. A warranty wouldn't apply in this situation. Customer
Right.
declines the estimate, so it becomes a service call only.
Generally, it would be an
Okay.
unsold job.
An unsold job. Okay, that's kind of what I thought, but I haven't. I've been along too long. We didn't call them walks back then, so okay. And I'm listening to a lot with regard to the triage, and that's something that I've always talked about for years. About triaging and the benefits of triaging, and I know that it can sometimes get overwhelming. But as the one gentleman said, having someone on maybe some part-time, or they're injured and can't get in the field and doing it, I think is an awesome job. And I know of another gentleman in Ohio. He has one of his guys was going to retire, and he made a deal with him that he does triage so many hours in the morning. So I think it is amazing how much money you can save if you get that show up, get that FTC, everything is much more cost effective.
I like what Trevor's
So-
saying in the chat here about our distributors really don't want to deal with 20% returns on triaged parts and having to put that back into stock. Ironically, today, one of my vendors called and said, because we have no distributors in the state, so everything gets shipped back. So we have to pay for labels and they give us a discount rate on the labels. But we had like 3 giant boxes that couldn't fit into other boxes. So we had to ask for additional labels. Well, I think it looks like we've been splitting between 2 vendors. So that vendor's calling me going, hey, I'm doing you a favor with these shipping labels. But your sales aren't where they need to be for me to continue to do that. So triaging means a lot more parts coming in the building that have to go back out if the job doesn't get sold or it doesn't need that part, right?
Well, I mean, that's a good point. It create not just a positive, but a negative. And I guess depending on your situation and your market and how it works out, and depending on the triage individuals, I've had people tell me their triage person is, 90%, 85%. That's pretty high, I'll be honest. But
Do
no
most of
mind
you
they wouldn't take
guys
them back.
sell to do-it-yourselfers?
I'm sorry?
Do most of you guys carry inventory to sell to the general public and the do-it-yourselfers?
No.
Too much arguing and too much stock in the building for the amount of sales that we were getting back in the day.
I think I think the one thing too, when you're talking about pre-ordering and returning parts, is as you guys all know, I mean, you have to have a cradle to grave when it comes to parts. Because if you don't, you're gonna get killed. And so you have to make sure these technicians are returning it. It puts a lot of work on your parts person to make sure it's organized and these parts are coming back. Because you start missing $100 here, and and that starts adding up. So, and returning all those parts, I mean, it is a big workload.
Our
I know.
software does a lot of that for us.
What's that?
Our software does a lot of that for us. Tells
Yeah.
us who needs to return
What
a
software are
part,
you
who
using?
is core.
Right, and ours does too. I mean, we use CDA, and you have to pull the reports, and it all gets scanned in, but it's still some work that has to be done. I know Encompass has brought up a few different times, like a stock program they have, because they can go into their their history files and see what parts they're moving the quickest. But I don't know where that's at, because they talk about it and then nothing happens on their end. So I don't know if anybody is doing that with Encompass.
We're trying to do that by working with the parts distributors, Michael. We're looking into this as well. What our goal in 2024 is to bottom line be just a better business partner, and how can we help? So we are talking to people like Encompass and some of the others about, I've been doing this now 37 years, and it was almost common that you had a year. And at the end of the year, we'd drive them nuts because we'd all pile up a whole bunch of boxes of parts and send them back. And though they never really liked it and they asked you to do it throughout the year, back they would take them, and they were a little less grumpy about it. But I know that things have changed. I'm hearing that from more people. Well, yeah, they still take them back, but they kind of get all grumpy, and then they tell you about your volume, and it's kind of a hassle. And I agree. You don't want to hear about you're not ordering enough. Well, I'm ordering what the work I'm doing is asking me to order. I'm not going to order a whole bunch more if I don't need it.
My issue with Marcone, I mean, Encompass has always been great with returns from my experience, but when it comes to Marcone, I mean, we take pictures because we'll send parts back, and then all of a sudden they'll send you your email and say you didn't get credit for this. This is not in a resellable package or whatever. And I'm like, man, we never used it. And quite frankly, you got to check if the right part's in the box, because I'm sure a lot of you guys have opened up a box and, you know, it's not the right part. And so
Yeah.
that's been a frustration I've had with Marcone. Ultimately, they'll fix it, but you have to go through some channels. But it's,
Mhm.
you know, all of a sudden they start trying to ding you. And usually it's with control boards and, you know, some other items, but
We're even looking
So,
at,
I mean, at the end of the day, I think what one of the questions we have to ask is what's even the point of tracking first call complete rate, right? And that's to ensure profitability. And so one of the cool things on the cost of doing business calculator on the UASA website is the option to look at your efficiency rate and what percentage of your jobs you complete, you know, at any given week. And, you know, the higher you get that efficiency rate, the more, you know, the less you have to charge or the more profitable you would be. So you can look at what exists. You don't necessarily have to have a higher first call complete rate or a target in mind, but you can say, well, I want to just be 5% better and then work on that. Because I don't think anybody has a specific target because number one, it depends, are you doing warranty or COD? Because if you're doing warranty, pre-ordering parts and then shipping them back, that's eating a big percentage of your rate right there because you're not getting that much for warranty. And then are you servicing a whole variety of manufacturers or are you just servicing, you know, 2 or 3 major ones? Because if you're servicing manufacturers that only sell from their, you know, their own individual warehouse instead of a vendor, that complicates things as well. I'm curious, are people tracking their you know, their efficiency rates? Are you completing 60%, 70%? What is it, and what specific steps have you taken towards improving that, and have you seen it increase profitability? That was too much. All right, Michael Lemunyon, go. You have something to say, I'm sure.
You're asking everybody to share their numbers, David. So it's so I say I'll go first. So mine is about similar to what yours is, figuring in the walks. And I always feel like we could do a better job of it. And it's like having a full-time tech in the office to do this. I don't know if that makes sense to do economically, if that offsets it that much or not. When you can have a full-time tech on the road. So that's my thoughts on that.
Well, on that point, Dave, it's kind of like, to a certain extent, does it matter, right? Because if you're doing that calculation and you're saying, all right, well, I'm 60% efficient, right? I complete 60% of my jobs on the first trip, whatever. That's pretty low. But let's say that's what it is. You're going to know what your rate needs to be in order to stay profitable where you want to be. And then that's what you charge. Increasing that efficiency rate by a little bit will help, but also you can just increase your rates that you're charging by a little bit and not have to hire another tech just to do triage. So there's kind of both ways you can go. Now, if you go too low, obviously that makes a big difference too, but I kind of wonder how much it really matters if you look at it that way. Okay. So for the people that are pre-ordering parts, are you doing a lot of warranty work or is that mostly COD work?
David, if I may weigh in here, sorry, didn't have my mic on. With what just mentioned about measuring efficiency and how important it is, or what weight does it have when it comes to a company's well-being, I think it depends on the volume of customers that you have available every day. Because if you, for example, in high season, in very high season, you know that we have to schedule 1 week in advance, stuff like that. Now, in those moments, you will want to take care of those repairs as quickly as possible. So if you have a constant flow of incoming work, it is very beneficial to keep track of this stuff and to have your triage point and get the first call complete as high as you can, because you always have people waiting. Now, I don't know you guys, but we're in the low season right now, and we kind of don't mind doing 2 trips for 1 repair, you know, because we don't have that many customers waiting in line to get their unit serviced. So I think it is very seasonal. but it's like we use the low season to hone our trade skills and tools and personnel in order to be ready for that high season. So keeping track in the success rate of the tools and processes we put in place does help us out be ready for that high season and keep our first call complete as high as possible, you know?
Good. Adrian, I see mentioned in the chat that in warranty they triage most often, but for COD it's more difficult. Now I wonder about that because I mean we do that as well, but let's just throw a number out there. Let's say you get $150 for a warranty job, but you've pre-ordered parts and now you have to ship them back at $15. That's 10%. I mean, you're not making any money on that job then, whether you complete it or not. So I'm curious if most people are handling warranty like that, if you are doing it. I think it makes a little bit more sense on COD because you can, you can just increase what you're charging to the customer to make up that return shipping if necessary, but you can't do that with warranty.
I think there is a strong influence in what I think was Doug that mentioned that they do not have any local suppliers, any local distributors. So they have to get everything shipped into their warehouse or directly to the customers like some people do. If you're in a position in which you have a local supplier, it is a great advantage. You know, we have a supplier a couple of blocks away from our warehouse, and we have a triple very close by, so we just go and pick up the parts, and we have a very good relationship with them. So the returns are very smooth, very quick. So perhaps it's not for everybody, but if you have the possibility of doing it and making it work as smoothly as possible, there are very strong benefits to doing a proper triage. And like I said, it does help when high season comes.
Oh yeah, it's a whole nother call. Whatever your average ticket is, just it's going to keep growing too as you add those extra new calls in, for sure, no doubt. By the way, David, I was silent because I was service desk. He can do it, and I might be doing it wrong, but on results of dispatch for a period for April, part of April, most of April, 77% were completed in the first trip. So then I just went and looked at my walks for that same period of time, and it was 36% of the 77% were service call onlys. So that means what? Am I getting this right? So it's 41% first call complete with a truck stock part or labor only repair. Would that make sense?
That's right.
So I don't know what that means. I've never heard people share their numbers before. I don't know what a good first call complete rate is. You know,
Doug, how we measure it, and I didn't come up with that. It was Wilmer. Perhaps you know him. He's the owner of our company. I think he's in the call as well. When we record for sales in services, I'm talking about services, right? When we do a record for sales, and we're only charging the service fee, but there was some work done. I don't know who mentioned. I think it was Manny who said that there are some repairs that you do something like putting off the child lock, but there was a little bit of work done. You know, it wasn't just diagnosis. The unit was repaired, but we only charged the service call fee. In those cases, you know, the service desk allows you to put a value on service call and a value on labor. Let's say that your service call is $120. You put $110 in service call and $10 for labor. So when you pull your report from service desk, it's gonna show an amount for labor and for service call fee. And those that have labor will count as not walked because there was a repair that was done, you know, but you only charge the service call fee. So that's how we keep track of that. And it allows us to separate a walk from service call fee repair. You know, that's how we call it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's and service desk, that's a feature they have, or is that a workaround that you guys are doing?
No, it's a workaround we did. You know, we needed a way to measure it.
Yeah.
And the reports that they pull out, which are very useful, by the way, do not have a way to measure walks, but we found a loophole and made it work, you know.
Yeah, we all have some creative workarounds. We could probably have a nice Zoom on service desk and workarounds. So do I suck, guys? 77% first call complete. Is that a good number for you?
Well, you said 40, you said 40.
Well, yeah, I'm
Well, it
just,
depends
but
on how you measure.
who's separating the walks? I'm just figuring everyone's got a system that's tracking first call completes. That's in and out in one trip. So again, it helps to have a measurement when you're comparing with others. So
It is. So for
I
you,
think
Doug,
77
my first call complete rate is lower, but my walk rate's lower. So apparently maybe my guys are doing a little bit more selling, or maybe we're just, again, it's how are we entering the data
Tracking
too,
it.
as well, or how
Yeah.
we count
Yeah,
this.
yeah. Well, I like what Brian said. Listen, if you're booked out a week, it would be terrible to order a door boot when the customer calls in and says, my washer boot is ripped. It would just be stupid not to have that on the truck when you're making them wait 3 and 4 days anyway. They get that done in one trip. There was a future visit that they were going to have to go back and put it in. You don't, the math is simple. If you put another call on that spot, that's more money for you, and that's one more happier customer for that month, right? So
I guess at the end of the day, that's where we are, Doug. Is if it's obvious like that, if it's an element or a boot or something, I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? So those are the easy ones. Our CSRs can do those. But I think once you get down the road of ordering 5 parts for something, I think that's where you get into the dangerous territory of now you have all those expensive returns and your parts and your parts vendor is going to start charging you more because they have to handle all that. So again, it's just handling anything smart, I guess, is the bottom line with anything.
yeah. What we
You know,
need is
Dave, it also
Mark.
comes
Mark's
down to
been running
things
his
like-
business. Mark's been running his business for a while. Mark, you should be off the road and you should triage for all of us who are here, and we'll just pool a few bucks, a month for you. And you'll have a second business. Would you be our triage guy, Mark?
Dude. Oh, you bet, Doug. Just give me a call.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Hey, Doug, this is Mark Phillips, AIG. If you calculated your first time complete by taking out your walks, so don't actually put them in as a denominator. I mean, honestly, if you said you were 70, if you're plus 70%, that is actually pretty damn good.
No, it's 41 though. It's 41, Mark.
Well, no, it's
take
41.
my walks out. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you take them out of the common denominator, don't even put them in at all, I think you'll be higher, won't you?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah, so
calculating.
take your total completes, Doug, subtract the
The
the walks.
41%.
walks,
Yeah.
and then use that number as your.
I got you. Can I do that with straight percentages, or do I have to grab the volume numbers?
You'd have to grab your volume numbers to do that.
Oh, I can do that. All right, I'll stop
Yeah.
talking so other people can talk and go have fun and figure that one out. Thanks.
I mean, I think that'd be pretty easy. You could just take all your jobs for the month and pull an Excel sheet, and whatever your service call is, sort that off, divide it
Correct.
by your total jobs, and there you go.
Yeah, so I got it.
Well, I would think, as to Dave's point, or about ordering simple parts like boots or elements, that is pretty straightforward, and I think probably everybody does that. Where you run into trouble is with as the equipment becomes more complicated and they have maybe 3 circuit boards in it, and the complaint is sometimes the display doesn't work. Then what do? You're going to order all the circuit boards, and that becomes more. That's, at least for us, is that type of complaint is very common and makes it almost impossible to pre-order parts, something like that. But yeah, boots and elements are.
That's why I'm interested in what Encompass, if they can ever get it together, maybe they do, and they're just not communicating it well with us, because they have way more history and what the fast moving parts are than we do. And if they can tell me, hey, these parts move the quickest, well, why would I not want to have some of those parts on each of our trucks?
You don't even need that app though to do that. You can just reach out to whoever your distributor is and ask for your top, 200 moving parts, right? As well as asking a list of what their top,
Right.
100 parts are. And then between those 2 lists, you can make a really good truck stock. Where
I
all
mean,
of a sudden you're carrying a GE dishwasher control board that you never thought you'd carry.
Right.
And here's what I think helps a first call complete. The bill comes up to like 405, and that could be a walk because it costs like, oh, well, but I do have it on the truck today and get you up and running. There's a first call complete because it's been sitting on your van.
And I think that's the key, right? It's because you give our job as a company is to make repairs. And everybody knows that. That's where we're profitable. And you give that customer a day to think about it, and they go on Google, and all of a sudden they find a dishwasher, that's not too much more. And they're like, you know what, I'm not going to do it. But if you can make it convenient for that customer, and you're like, I can get this done right now, and your life can go back moving along and doesn't slow you down, I think that's a lot of people love that. And
Michael, do you use Blue Book or Service? Here's a shout out to Dan up there.
We use Blue Book, and I wish everybody everybody I meet, I ask that question, and I hope everybody does it, because it makes us all money in the end when people aren't undercutting, you for $100 for a job.
Right. Well, they have that triage thing, kind of what you're talking about with incomes, where it shows what percentage on a certain model. It's not great. It's not always accurate, but it will show you what on that specific model number, what part was used the most to fix that complaint.
And maybe that's a great thing you mentioned, because I have gone over that with Dan, and maybe that's a segment that we can maybe spend 15-20 minutes on one day, and Dan, kind of go through that again and show us, because even a tool like that with less experienced CSRs, if you can get somebody working on it, these little things, right? You can increase your business 2%, 3%, and just keep on tweaking it. I mean, it's how you eat an elephant, right? It's one bite at a time. And before you know it, a year down the road, you're just like, wow, look at all this.
Just made me hungry, Michael. What are you doing?
Misty has a good question in the chat. What is everyone using to decide what you are stocking in your van inventory? So some people are running reports
generated
how
PowerPoint data bill, and I saw.
Go ahead.
Some people
David.
are saying, how are you keeping track of what you're using, and how often are you deciding to say, if I've used it 3 times a year, I want to put it on the truck? I think Misty's kind of getting at that type of question there.
Well, you better have a good operating system for sure, right?
Right, but you can run a parts usage report and say, I've used this, I've used this control board 18 times this year, which should probably put it on the truck, right? But it would also then basing it on what happened in the past and not what's going to happen in the future, which is also difficult.
Well, it is, because you're right, because you might have an area where a tech works and more high-end stuff, and a tech that's 30 miles away never uses that because there are no GE monograms in that area. But you can have a tech that works in an area that there's a ton of GE monograms, and you don't want this tech to have that stock, but you want that tech. So you can start to really get granular with how you're strategically putting truck stock in.
Yep. Oh, by the way, Mark, about 56%. That would be my first. That's for April. That's our first call complete rate of repairs, 56%. So judge and shame me now. I can see you doing it, Lena. I can see
better than 41%. See, you just didn't do your math right.
There you go.
And I would just add on to what Michael was just sharing. Having the different truck stock between your technicians also opens up the opportunity for transfer of parts between techs to get a first time complete. So something that you might think of as kind of an in market part, whether that's a PD, a forward stocking location, or other truck stocks.
Do each of you have kind of a budget amount of truck stock inventory? Like each truck has $2,000 worth of inventory in it, or $4,000 or $1,000, or have any rules set up regarding inventory that you keep on the vehicles?
I think it just has to move.
Budget in mind. Yeah, that's kind of what I did, Doug. Is I looked at what we used most frequently, and I put that on the truck. It ended up being maybe, I don't know, $4,000 per truck or something. And,
when you say moves most frequently, how many turns are you talking about in like a year? Are you doing like a rolling 12 period?
Yeah, I'd say 3 to 4 times a year. I forget exactly what I did. I have to go back and look at it, but not very, very frequent, but 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah. Yeah, once a quarter, right? I mean, it's hit or miss. I remember when the high voltage board came out for Whirlpool. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. Let's get that sucker on the truck. That's like 15 that sat there for a whole year and no one ever used one of them. I was like, okay. So speculation's a little dangerous.
Well, because
And
the
just for
speculation is
reference,
always
when you,
based on what happened in the past.
I wasn't trying to anticipate the future because how many times you got no power to the compressor? I have some techs that are too lazy. So I'm like, crap, it's a plug and play board to help these guys who aren't going through the motions. But I think it's my biggest blunder. Still here though.
and just to clarify, when you guys are talking about number of times you've used something in a time period, is that broken down per technician? Like if you have, a couple of technicians in a part, you've used it 5 times in the last year, really per technician, that's only once in the last year. Which kind of way are you guys talking about your numbers?
For me, it's just company wide. So all
Company-wide.
of our techs service basically all of the same products, no matter what. So if we've used it 3 or 4 times a year across the company, it's going to go on everybody's truck. And there's also a limit to that. I'm not going to stock a $1,000 control board.
Yeah, exactly. So we cover a large area geographically, and so the product changes in those areas. And we also have different techs that work on, some are just refrigeration guys. So we do look at it as per truck.
We count it as per truck as well. David, is your parts distributor close to you, or do you have to ship in?
No, we don't have any part. Well, we have one Marcone location about an hour away, and they don't really stock much. It's one of their sort of weird satellite locations. So no, we don't have anything. Everything has to be shipped in. And honestly, a good percentage of what we do doesn't come from Marcone or Encompass anyway. It has to come direct from some of the manufacturers, which makes it more difficult.
Sure. Yeah, I think if you're shipping in, the magic number is like 4 turns. That makes sense. Because you're warehousing it yourself, right? Or is your warehouse the truck? Dave, I don't know if you
No,
caught
we're
that.
keeping we're keeping the truck as a warehouse. Like each truck is set up as its own warehouse.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, in my case, I do have a parts store here, so I stock quite a bit more than what some of us would. But so again, it's case by case, and again, it's cost of the part too. I'm not gonna,
Yes.
put on, expensive parts unless it really makes sense to do so.
Yeah,
it's a lot of work. Tracking this stuff and keeping track of all the stuff and monitoring, and you have to keep up on it every quarter.
Yep.
Yeah, I think when you have local distributors, you can go higher on your turns. You're not as impacted because you have your RTAT will be, lower. You're able to manage that a little bit differently. And also in your larger markets, you're going to have a variety of product. Like as you were saying, you'll have like in Metropolitan Chicago, for example, we'll have some areas that do not have sub-zeros, and other areas have all sub-zeros. So, and when you're dispatching from a territorial point of view, well, you have to pay attention to what truck is running in that territory, right? Where that might not be the case in a smaller market.
Trevor had a good point earlier up about all of the different models and different control boards and things like that, which definitely makes it trickier for stocking parts. But has anybody noticed the sort of trend towards on-programs control boards and some of the maybe the higher end brands that you have some program on site? I think that makes it a little bit easier actually, because then you can just stock that one blank board and program it.
Hey, can I ask a question?
No.
Huh? Can you hear
Sure,
me?
Scott. Fire away, buddy.
So listen, I think we're leaving out probably the most important part of this whole thing, and that is we can have all the parts that they need to fix something, but what about that technician that goes in thinking about how he's going to order a part and not how he's going to fix it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you change the thought process of the technician? There's 2 technicians. One technician goes in thinking about how can I fix this product? The other technician goes in thinking, what can I do to get out of this house and not have to do work today? So how do we motivate that technician that is not there to fix something?
Shock
Amen, Scott.
collar.
That's
Well,
a
it
good
depends.
question.
I mean,
Yep.
are you looking at it as we've pre-ordered this part and why are you ordering it again? Or this is truck stock, so why are we ordering it? Because if that's the case, then there can be some sort of consequence. In fact, we've been looking at that recently because I have one tech who just kind of does that. I'm like, hey man, you have that on the truck. Why are you ordering it? It was a first call complete. And you know, that's going to be a reduced commission or something like that. And I haven't figured out exactly what we're going to do, but it depends, right? Because if they have the part and they're ordering it anyway, then that's, they're not doing their job. So that's like a consequence. I don't know that that's a motivation.
So David, if they're commissioned, they're already taking a hit. So I can tell you right now, and our guys are straight commissioned. So if they're willing to part order something because they want to get home early, they're not going to really care about a penalty of finance. It's going to really be about whether you're measuring this technician, and if the coins start disappearing, it's an accountability of discipline, writing them up, and then potentially letting them go.
Can I ask a question about just being proactive and kind of going through like the pre-screening process? Like, does anybody have a pre-screening process, like certain questions at intake or like other things to kind of prepare, or have all the technicians, like, do they have a regular routine where they're supposed to pre-screen, like they have to screen their own calls each day? Or does anybody have anything different other than having a different technician or a older technician or somebody else reviewing all of the calls?
Well, we're getting the customer service rep to, you know, capture information, of course, basic information like error codes, model and serial number, as complete of a description of the problem as possible. And then from there, either they can do it if they're familiar with the problem, or they can pass it on to somebody further down the line with more experience to look at it. But capturing the information, we do have a list of questions per appliance type, you know, that you might follow up, and they're similar to what a tech would look at when you diagnose it. You know, you go in and is the fan running, is it making any noise, and that type of question that they can get right up front on the phone.
Is that a structured process, David?
It is just, I mean, it's intended to be structured. I'm working on developing more structure on it with our new software. It gives us a little bit more flexibility on that. But yeah, there is a list of questions they're supposed to be asking per appliance type. Yeah.
So then there's like stages then. So you have CSR at intake that has scripted questions guided to whatever the product is. And then she clears it for dispatch at that point, or it goes to a different higher level technician for, again, still staying in triage before it's released to dispatch. And then when it goes to dispatch, is the technician running the call, getting it for their input as well, somewhere along that process?
Yeah, no, it's not that structured. It's they'll get that information and then it will be scheduled or dispatched. And if it's a same day job, obviously there's nothing we can do about it. But we're looking at the jobs, you know, 2 or 3 days in advance and ordering what we can for those based on the questions that they've asked. But we don't have a multi-stage setup.
Is operations doing that, or is the technician looking 3-4 days ahead?
No, the technicians are not. I mean, I encourage the technicians to do it. Some of them do on their own.
Right.
Some of them don't. It's not an official process that we have that the technicians work.
Okay. Yeah, well, as we all know, the better technicians, they do look 2-3 days out, and that's why they're more effective. Too bad that behavior doesn't rub off and become contagious.
Well, that's exactly right, James. And to your point too, Scott, I mean, technician training is huge part of this. When we had one tech that was ordering an oven temp sensor every time he'd get a warranty call on a bake issue. So he's trying to satisfy the customer. He's ordering another part. Now there's nothing wrong with the oven, and he's ordering a sensor for it. And then you know what happens? Then it's a callback, and then so now you got a customer unhappy, and then you got 3 trips into this thing, where it should have been handled properly in the first time. So technician training is huge.
I brought this up to
Technician training
David.
is,
I brought this up to David, I think. I think you and I talked a little bit about it. I talked with some people in my peer group. As a COD business, where they get a commission percentage of the money collected, with a service fee that's been rising and rising and rising, they're pretty content and happy with the commission off of a service fee. So I'm gonna have to carefully and slowly undo that and give them a smaller spiff for a service call only. Because, you know, if
something
you
we
can
were-
make, right, if you can make $65,000 a year just going in and collecting service fees all day long, then what's your motivation to go and really take care of your customers and be a great advocate for them?
well, I think that goes back to James's point about, you know, some technicians are just good and it's a personality issue. And, you know, not every technician you hire is going to be an ambitious, intelligent person that wants to make a lot of money. So
Right.
you have to kind of balance that, I think, right? But yeah, I was considering that, looking at walks being paid a lower commission rate.
That makes sense, because you do want to get ahead of somebody who does collect walks. We're not in business to do that. We want to take care of the client and solve the client's problem. And so you have to be careful of what you're rewarding financially, because you might get the wrong result. And that's an example of getting the wrong result, right? And you would think ethically they would stop themselves and say, what have I done for the client? But they don't.
And this popped in my head, James, from what you said. Like, you have some technicians that are great. They understand our goal and our mission to take care of our customers. So they might want to triage. They may want to be prepared and equipped to take care of the customer right away. There's a financial incentive as well. Those are what good techs, great techs care about. But the less than great, we may have to push and nudge them, and they may decide to triage and take a little more investment in their truck stock. Maybe an individual tech would come to me and say, hey, I've needed this. I could have sold that part 5 times in the
Yeah.
last 6 months. Well, give me your part number. I put it in the service desk. You know what? It is a good part number. Let's put that on your truck. Maybe that motivation happens because they're making $5 or $10 on a walk instead of trying to make a living off the walks.
Yeah, David, or Doug, I've dealt with my share of technicians, and time is always something they're always looking at. And okay, do we give them some extra time in the day to look over their calls, next week's calls? And maybe that takes away a service call that they otherwise would be going to. What does that look like to you? Because ultimately these guys want to get back and finish their day as fast as possible. So do we do that? Do we give them a little bit extra time in their day to look at their calls? What do you think on that?
Oh, you're just giving me heartburn is what you're doing, Dan.
I know, exactly. So,
You
so,
know?
so maybe we do, to Dave's point, where we have someone that kind of overlooks this and says, okay, have maybe one senior technician or service manager start triaging everybody's calls. And what does that look like? Maybe he's running less calls that day. Maybe he's only doing a half day's work. And that's kind of what we used to do, and split that up. So we have a technician maybe running 2 or 3 calls a day, and then the rest of the day he's just triaging. Okay. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing type thing. And then how does that improve our numbers? Because if we can get one technician an extra first call complete that day that he otherwise would not have gotten, that kind of pays for itself, especially how that scales. So we've actually done the numbers at SES and looked at it. Okay, even if I get 2 extra calls of first call completes, that adds up really high. Is that possible every time? Probably not, but at least one is probably easily attainable. So then what would that number look? If we have a 6 technician company and we add an extra first call complete for every one of those technicians, revenue, we're looking at about $345,000 using Blue Book rates. Okay, that's for a company of 6. Just an extra first call complete for each technician. So to Dave's question, he's asking, is it really worth it to put someone off the road to do that? With 6 technicians, I'd probably say yes, it is worth it. Okay, and then there's tools to do that too. You can do texting, get those model and serial numbers text to your company. How do you do that? triage tools, service manuals, service bulletins, use those resources. My Parts Help Diagnostics, that's certainly a tool we can use too, a digital tool that's out there. Shameless plug. So, I mean, those are things we can do. Thanks.
I think there's also other things, technician audit. You're talking about walks here. How many people are looking at what is the technician quoting that customer? How many parts are on that quote? I think James, I can see you laughing there. There's definitely technicians out there that are going to overquote a job because they don't want to do it. I might have been guilty of Westinghouse washers somewhere in the 80s doing that. But definitely there's jobs you don't want to do. And and getting back to what Dave and David said about the commissions and reducing it down for those walks, because technicians are going to put more parts on jobs. And this is actually, I'm a warranty administrator, and these part predictors worry me a little bit because we're turning technicians into parts changes as opposed to technicians.
That's also kind of the other concern, is that you have a technician that goes out there with parts, and then he's like, nope, I need more parts. And then nope, I need more parts. And then nope, I need more parts. And that is a huge problem. It is exceedingly expensive for everybody involved.
Yeah. And we even get to a stage where, we're having to look at what we do, because we'll get a request to repair with 6 parts on it, and we'll look at that job and say, you know what, we'll just buy that out. But we don't even know if you've been out and looked at it. You've said,
right,
you've said, hey,
on the entire company, and saying that you as a company don't know what you're doing because you're putting 6, 7, 8 parts on a job.
Yeah, and we definitely measure companies by number of parts used. I would suggest companies should measure technicians on how many parts used. That's my 2 cents anyway.
Well,
Hey, Dan.
it is something you got to look at, but it also can be concerned when you are providing parts. And that's where I'm concerned about it, because you might have a company you're representing, and they ship the parts to the client, or they ship it to you and you bring them out.
Yeah.
And let's say there's 3 or 4 parts, and none of them are needed, but the expectation to the customer, the homeowner, is going to be that you put those parts in. They sent them, put them in. And so you get skewed numbers when you analyze it, because you had parts you didn't even need being installed for a human reason, not for a mechanical reason. So then you look at your data, now you have skewed data.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's where that problem is.
And that's really why I wouldn't even get in the business of sending parts. I understand there is a company out there doing it. I've heard some stories on numbers, but yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, the customer thinks those parts need to go in because they're sitting on their doorstep. And there's a huge cost to doing that. As you're all aware, getting parts and returning parts is a very expensive.
And it really
we had once worked with a manufacturer rep, and he told me something very smart, and we've done that going forward. Is if we have pre-order parts or anybody has sent us parts, he said, do not bring those parts in the house so you diagnose the problem, because the customer will then want you to install them just because you have them. So we try to tell them, leave them in the truck unless you need them.
Absolutely.
Well, there's certainly not one fix for all, right? I mean, we have technicians that care and are excellent. We have technicians that care that aren't that good. And we have the technicians that, and it just, in every aspect that we just spoke about, there's definitely not going to be one fix for all. Skewing numbers. I mean, you're battling trying to get your customer fixed in a certain period of time if you're a warranty call. And I've seen some manufacturers care less about parts on a Monday, but then 5 months later, because it came from down, they're changing their tune and they're going, hey, I think one of them now is sending us return labels we just do this much warranty, very little for some high-end manufacturers. They're now sending us return labels. Because I was like, what are we supposed to do with the parts? Put them in. Now they want them back. You know, so it's something that you guys all have to navigate as a huge team. And where do you work for, Mark? AIG? So that's huge. You guys are like 1
Correct.
million people and 500, you know, I mean, it's got to be hard for that big moving machine to sort through all this stuff, huh, Mark?
Well, I wish I had that many people working for me, but unfortunately I don't. But AIG as a company, yes, it's a very big company, but just the warranty division and what we're doing, you know, we're just a small piece of the big machine.
But we can feel when winds change and philosophies
Yeah.
of the manufacturers are going in a different direction, and we feel like a yo-yo, you know. But the reality is we just kind of gotta like make the best of every situation and move on. You know,
It's every quarter when the quarter earnings come out. That's when
Yeah.
you'll get a change of direction.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
We fix
so
anything today?
we didn't. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add? I think we're coming up on the end of the hour. If there's anything else anybody would like to discuss, I'm happy to stay here and talk about it. But if not, then we appreciate everybody coming on. And Dave, is there anything you want to add?
I say it was a fast hour. We could probably we could probably do this again.
You know, I think it was great to see the third parties join in today.
Dave and David, this is Lance Sly with Sub-Zero. I wouldn't mind sharing some thoughts if you guys are okay with that.
Sure.
Good, love it.
So this is something that we've been focusing on for a little bit. And I want to kind of piggyback off of what Dan Eccles talked about. And what we've been sharing and what we've been understanding is, first and foremost, we got to understand what is our first time fix rate and be completely honest with yourself on what it is. You know, if you need to Uber a part to yourself to get that done in the first visit, well, there's a cost associated with that. So number one, understand what your first time fix is. And then we've developed a calculator for our partners to use where you can do a what if scenario and put in high level numbers off your P&L, put in your first time fix rate, technicians, etc. And then over, you know, on the other side and on the if side, update your first time fix. So if you're at 60, what would it mean to my bottom line if I got it to 70%? And that's kind of where Dave talked about, you know, for a $345,000 hit to your bottom line in a positive way, will I invest $150,000 each year to gain that? More than likely, right? But the next question comes into what is that investment going to be towards, right? We've had plenty of conversations, and I can tell you when I do talk to people about it, when we talk about first time fix, a lot of people will say, well, parts is the issue. Parts are the reason why I'm not getting a first time fix. I don't believe in that. I don't think parts are necessarily the cause. I would question why are we going on a call when we know what parts we need. But what, and Steve Heinrichs mentioned in the chat, what we've been focusing on is doing root cause analysis and understanding those items that we're not getting a first time fix. Understand what's causing those issues. That's going to help you understand where you need to take action. And then you're going to ask yourself, all right, if I can increase my first time fix because let's just say it's a triage process, and I can increase it by X, and that's going to do Y to my bottom line, but that investment to the triage is going to be Z. And if it's $350,000 positive to the bottom line, it's going to cost me $150,000 for a triage person, I'm probably going to invest in that. But the most important thing is understanding what's actually causing it, because you can go down some rabbit holes and not really understand where your opportunities lie. So some thoughts on kind of what we've been talking about here over at Sub-Zero.
Smart stuff, Lance.
Yeah, thanks, Lance. It's awesome.
I was going to say, Lance, do you mind introducing yourself for those that don't know who you are?
Yeah, sir. My name is Lance Lai. I've been with Sub-Zero for over 25 years in a variety of different roles. Kind of the first half of my career was on the operations side within production, manufacturing, etc. But I'm currently responsible for our in-home service installation and parts distribution network for the organization.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else? Well, David and Dave, thank you very much for hosting today. If anyone has any topics they want to discuss in upcoming laundry rooms, please feel free to email us at administration@unitedservicers.com and we can work on getting those plugged in. We have some availability for different topics. But if not, we look forward to seeing you guys on the next laundry room.
Sarah,
Yeah.
one quick thing, the hosts, could they also include like their, talk about introduction? I don't know if they did it, but did they introduce themselves with respect to their companies? Like I know David, Olivia, I know we know everybody, but everybody in the call might not know who they are.
Nope. They did not. David and Dave, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Okay, I guess I go first. My name's Dave Smith, and I've been with USA forever, and I'm vice president of the board of the directors. I've got a appliance service company with 17 techs now in Toledo, Ohio, and we cover about 100 miles and around, and we keep pretty busy. And I want to thank everybody for your participation today.
My name is David Oliva. I am a board member for UASA for about 3 years or so now. I run a company called RD Appliance Service based on Long Island. We service all of Long Island and Manhattan. We have 6 technicians, and primary focus is higher end products. And that's it. Thanks for coming, everybody. And this was a really good discussion, like Dave said. I got a lot of notes here for things I can fix myself.
Thank you, guys.
Yes. Thank you very much. And maybe in the future, we need to continue this conversation. Have a little follow-up and see what's happened.
Yeah.
Well, everyone have a great afternoon,
Thanks,
evening.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.